You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
Yeah. My heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down to my soul. And I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. From the sidelines down to the post. Put it down like not even close. All out to the last whistle blow. From the flag with the soul and crossbones. Everybody stand up, get your hands up. Let a team know that we got they back. This is our house, this is our town. On top, everyone not copy.
How about those friggin' Pirates?
Welcome into the Sports Objective as we have a very special show. Bubba, hard to believe that less than 48 hours and we're going to have some baseball in Omaha.
Yeah, always love watching the College World Series. Very interesting field this year. Every program has been before, but you have a couple programs that haven't been there in an awfully long time in Wake Forest and Oral Roberts. Then you have some traditional powers that have been there several times, won national championships like LSU, Stanford, etc. So I'm very excited to talk some baseball over this next hour or so. And and Dave, we'll start off the show. We've had this guy on the program before. It's been a couple years though, and great time to have him back on because what a year for the Demon Deacons. Welcome in from their Learfield network, also the ACC network plus Lary Sorensen. Larry, we appreciate your time this evening.
My pleasure, guys. Glad to be here.
So, Larry, what a great year for the Demon Deacons. I mean, we heard that the expectations were high, for obviously, this year. And can you give us, a thumbnail sketch about the season? We know about the arms and the bats. It just seems like everything has been, I wouldn't say perfect. I know nobody will ever say perfect, but pretty close to it for the Demon Deacons.
No, but when you're 52-10, things have been going pretty well for you, no question about that. And it's funny because you mentioned the offense and the pitching, and really to me the defense has been the biggest surprise and one of the real glues of the entire season. It's kept the team in games every single day until the offense or the pitching caught up to it. And it's been very consistent. So it's been a well-rounded team. They've done things right from day one. Really, really close unit of guys that are fighting and playing for each other. And I know that's trite, but it was a conscious decision by Wake Forest a couple years back to change the culture, and they have, and it's paid off in a big way.
No question, Larry. With talk about the Demon Deacons. Obviously, I know how big a deal it is for Omaha, but can you talk about the team? What's the practice schedule? What's that like for the Demon Deacons for this weekend?
Well, everything really starts cranking up tomorrow. They'll have a practice on the field at Schwab Stadium and then a media event, and then they'll practice again on Friday and then go about game day for a 1 o'clock Central start on Saturday. And everything is lined up after a terrific regional, super regional that took 2 games to get past Alabama. So from a physical standpoint, everything is lined up the way Wake Forest wants. Their pitching rotation is established the way that they want to play it, depending on which way they want to go. But it's an exciting time for a lot of players that went through some bad times a couple of years ago and have rebounded to finally realize, as Tom Walter calls it, this is the Holy Grail, and we've got a chance to get it.
No question about it. As we bring in now Kyle from LaGrange Barber, I know with can you talk about the starting rotation? Who's going to get the ball starting on Saturday afternoon there in Omaha? Well,
it appears that it's going to be Rhett Lauder, who was the ACC Pitcher of the Year for the second year in a row. He's 15-0 this season. He has pitched in 17 games. Wake Forest has won every single game that they played. So as Walter said, every time he's left the dugout this year, Wake Forest has won. So that's a really good feeling as a coach. And then it'll be Josh Hartle the next day, in all likelihood, a left-hander whose numbers are very similar to Lauder's career-wise, but he's only in his second year. He's got one more year. He passed up a couple $1 million probably in the draft had he decided to go to the pro draft, but he's from Winston-Salem. He grew up wanting to be a Demon Deacon, and so he pulled himself out of the draft and said that he was going to go to college, and he's got one more year. So a left-hander that's got high strikeout, low walks, as does Lauder. Pitching goes about 7 or 8 deep, and it's probably the single strength of the club.
Larry, you guys, number one overall seed, make it to Omaha. It's weird thinking about you guys being the number one overall seed. And I look at the brackets because of upsets on paper anyway. The side of your bracket appears to be the tougher of the two.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that because the preseason polls and everything, when you looked at it, it was LSU, it was Stanford, then it was Tennessee, and Wake Forest was 6. So it was 1, 2, 3, and 6 in all the preseason polls, and now they're facing each other in one bracket in Omaha. So you're right, it is stacked on that side. But that's the great thing about baseball too, is you still have to go out and play the game. One starting pitcher has a really, really good night, and it throws the whole apple cart out of whack.
You know, Bubba and I were talking prior to the show, and speaking of the brackets, it's interesting. I don't believe Wake and Virginia, despite being in the ACC, played in the regular season. Very realistic possibility you could see, you know, a Wake Virginia national championship. A lot of baseball to be played before then, but talk about that potential for an all ACC national championship game.
Well, obviously, you know, the way ACC is a very, very good league, and people love to argue in baseball, and that's one of the things they love to argue about. And I think when you look at it realistically, you'd have to say the SEC is a touch better, but I think that Wake Forest proved that they can play with anybody, certainly with what they did to Alabama, and Virginia is a terrific club that we have not seen but know a lot about from years past. And so an all ACC final would be a pretty amazing thing. I think there are going to be some great baseball games. There's great pitching out here, no question about that. A lot of teams with some power, and we'll see how the ballpark contains and changes the offensive plans. But there's some really good teams, and there's some really good storylines too. When you think about it, Wake Forest with only 5,200 students would be a real Cinderella story, except that Oral Roberts is in it and kind of takes that mantle away from them. And it's a great story in its own right. So there's some small schools. There's the baseball traditional powerhouses. There's going to be some underdogs. Wake Forest, even though it's a smaller school, has had a great year and kind of have the target on their back with that number one seed.
Yeah, like you say, Larry, Wake Forest making its first appearance in Omaha since 1955. Oral Roberts, I think perhaps second all time, but at least their first since something like 1978. And then you have a program like Florida, you know, the Gators, in many people's opinions here about 5-6 years ago, they were, you know, considered by some to have the most talent pretty much year in, year out. And then this is the first time they've been to Omaha since, and which shows, you know, how many things have to align and how hard it is to get there. And then you, like you're saying, LSU, pretty much the team of the 90s, and then a program like Stanford, who's there for the third year in a row, that was also just there consistently throughout the 1990s and early 2000s.
Yeah, so you're going against the traditional powers, and don't forget Tennessee. I mean, the team that Tennessee put together a couple of years ago was just unbelievable, and they didn't win. So
right.
You know, one thing you know for sure is that in baseball, I played with Joaquin Andujar, and he used to say, in baseball, the only thing you know for sure is you never know. And that's really true because anything can happen on any given day. The breaks, you know, you lose a ball in the lights in the ninth inning of a ball game, and all of a sudden you're on your way to the College World Series. When that's what makes it so exciting and the great game that it is.
As you've done your prep work for this College World Series opening game for the Deacs against the Stanford Cardinal, obviously, in a very interesting way that Stanford won that ball game against Texas the other night. It was a shame. Even though I was pulling for Stanford to win the game, I hate to see it unfold in that way. But, you know, interestingly enough, I'm sure you heard this, that I think that was the third time this year that an ending like that had happened at the ballpark there, Sunken Diamond in Palo Alto.
Yeah, Texas A&M in the regionals the week before had some unfortunate luck with the lights out there. And so you believe it's something that's got to be addressed, first of all, because that's not the right way to be having a game decided. But it also gives Stanford that little bit of magic. You know, there's always a team or two that come out that everything has gone right, and you start believing, okay, this is our year. Because even when we faced adversity, something magical happened that made it go right for us. And you start thinking you can't lose. And that's as big a factor. That can be as big a factor as having 3 20-game winners, on your staff. So believing in your team, believing that good things are always going to happen to you can go a long way. And it seems to me Stanford obviously has a great team in all the different categories that you look at statistically, but they also have a little bit of karma going for them right now.
Yeah, as you've done your prep work for that game, I had the chance to see some of the Stanford, Texas Super Regional. But what can you tell us about this Cardinal lineup and in this program that's now in Omaha for a third consecutive year?
Well-rounded. They do a lot of things well. They play good defense. They can hit the ball out of the ballpark. They can run a little bit, and obviously they pitch a little bit too. But well-coached, a team that's, as you said, steeped in tradition, so they believe that they should be here, and there's a confidence factor that goes along with that. The power factor is something that's going to be interesting to see because Wake Forest plays in a ballpark that's a little bit on the smaller side, but the ball also carries very well. Now, having said that, Brock Wilken hit 3 home runs in the game against Alabama, and the shortest one was 413 feet. One was in for the 420s and one was 430s. So yeah, he hits the ball a long way, as does Kurtz, as do some of the other players. But the ballpark's going to be a factor. I think that the natural grass is going to be something of a factor, and I think that it'll be interesting to see how the defenses shake out.
Taking a look at the potential matchups in that side of the bracket or on that side of the bracket, obviously you have LSU taking on Tennessee, the Vols. Season a year ago that was very much kind of like what the Deacs were able to produce this year. Did not make it to Omaha, however, coming up short in that Super Regional against Notre Dame. But this year they go on the road, get it done, and they're taking on an LSU team that outside of Paul Skeens haven't been excellent on the mound, but they can really swing the bats.
They do. They're off, and they do it a lot of different ways. They can score in a number of different ways, and in a ballpark like this, that's something that becomes very important. A team that runs the bases well, not necessarily even in stolen bases, but runs well, takes the extra base, makes things happen, keeps the pressure on. That could be a very dangerous type team. I'm not sure that LSU has the kind of pitching depth that some of the other teams have. I think Tennessee just has some amazing arms. I watched the Burns kid throwing 102 miles an hour the other night, and that makes you shake in your boots a little bit just watching it on TV, when somebody's throwing that hard. But every team has its own strengths, but they also all have weaknesses too. There are avenues that you can explore some different things. And the main thing is come out with a good attitude, believe in what you do, play your game, and then see how it all shakes out.
And you talk about that Burns pitcher for Tennessee. I don't think I've ever seen a college pitcher react the way he did at the end of that inning. He just about lost his mind when he got those 2 straight strikeouts. He did the slash across the throat. I'm surprised the umpires didn't get on him about it. Maybe they didn't see it.
Well, and I think that somebody did see it because I know that there's some talk about somebody paying a penalty for having done the slash across the throat. And I'm not sure if it was that one or somebody else, but they're starting to take that celebration rule and all those kinds of antics much more seriously this year, which is good and bad. I mean, you want the kids to play, you want to let them have fun and express themselves, but we also know what human nature is, and we know that if you give people the opportunity, they will go too far with it, and clearly slashing your throat is going a little bit far, or addressing the other team with something is going a little bit too far. But it's Omaha, it's the CWS, and if people out there haven't been to this event, get on out here. I was fortunate enough to have come out here 3 times to broadcast it for ESPN. I worked with Tim Brando and Mike Patrick for 3 years. And my broadcast partner, Stan Cotton, has been 27 years at Wake Forest and has never been out here. And we're just having a blast, going to the different things, walking over to the ballpark, looking around, seeing what the view is going to be from where you're going to be sitting. And the town is fired up already. People in the restaurants, when they see the Wake Forest on your shirt, want to come over and talk, want to ask you questions. Sophisticated fans. Omaha has always been known as a city that adopts the teams. And they know the players' names, they know the players' numbers, and that makes for a fun week.
Now, when you were able to attend in the past and call the games with Tim Brando, et cetera, like you just referenced, was that at the current location, or did you have a chance to go to Rosenblatt?
Now, that was at Rosenblatt back in
Yeah.
90, 91, and 92. And just the greatest event in sports that I've been to. And I've been to World Series and different events like that and all-star games. And it absolutely was the best events that I had been to in my career as a broadcaster or as a player, and really enjoyed it, soaked in all of the great things that make amateur baseball what it is, and watching those teams. And those are, some of the same teams, Stanford, LSU, Florida, some of those same clubs were here back then, and great teams then.
Yeah, that's one of the things that it was disappointing that when it moved to TD Ameritrade, it's now Charles Schwab Field, because I never had the chance to get out to Rosenblatt.
Yeah, well, it was, and probably my favorite memory of that whole time was Field of Dreams came out then, and our producer Jay Rothman got Kevin Costner to do the voiceover for the Open, and he showed some young players playing in a little league field, and they were walking around and playing, and then they started walking in one direction towards a wall, and it was the outfield wall at Rosenblatt, and these young little league players walked through the wall, and they morphed into the stars of each team in their uniforms. And Kevin Costner said, "Is this heaven? No, this is Omaha." And that was the way. And I mean, I still get goosebumps and chills, because that's kind of the magic that the College World Series brings to the serious baseball fan.
Now that you say that, I remember seeing that. It was one of those memories that I forgot I had. I can remember seeing that on ESPN now.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And it reminds me of the Major League game that was played at the Field of Dreams, the Open that they did for that. So, yeah, very cool there with Kevin Costner. But before we talk some more baseball, you talking about umpires and the, especially the celebration rule, the prop rule, if you will. And that's something that has really been cracked down on, and we'll talk about that and more during our second half hour with veteran retired umpire Scott Erby, who worked 3 College World Series down through the years. So he'll join us here in about 15 minutes or so. But taking a look at the other side of the bracket, we have Virginia, who obviously hosted both the regional and super regional, the number 7 overall seed in the tournament. Won the super regional by winning 2 in a row against Duke after dropping that initial game. And then Florida, you have a team that's, I want to say, hit about 130 home runs. So it's going to be a very entertaining matchup. And then you have a team in TCU that has made it to Omaha probably 6 times in the last 12 to 15 years, taking on the real underdog and media darling, if you will, the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, who are a 4 seed coming into the tournament. And I really thought they should have at least been a 3 seed with like a 46-11 record prior to the tournament.
Well, it's a hard thing trying to seed all these teams, because there's so much talent and everybody does it in different ways that a lot of the times you're comparing apples to oranges, and it's really kind of hard to try to pick. I think that Virginia is a really good team, great offensive club. They can beat you in a number of different ways. They've got a head coach that's been to this event, understands what it takes. He's got good pitching again. He's got superstar players. They've got guys that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. I think that they're a team, as I look at that other bracket, that I really like. But then there's Florida that, like you said, has terrific power, and they've got some pitching as well. So that's going to be a great series. And then, who knows? Maybe one of those other 2 teams is the team, the karma effect, the magic of getting hot at the right time, which, as we all know, is half the battle. I mean, you can have a great year, but you go cold for a week, and all of a sudden you're out of it. You go, you play very well, but not great the whole year, and get hot and get everybody playing well at the same time, and all of a sudden great things can happen. I think Wake Forest was really excited to see 9 home runs on Sunday to clinch their super regional, because that's their game, and it came together and everybody got hot. So that's what they're looking for. But on the other side, I think Florida and Virginia are the class of that bracket, and that should be a great matchup starting things off.
Yeah, the 9 home runs, and I believe that was the NCAA tournament super regional record, and I think second most runs scored in a game with 22. But
yeah, here's a stat for you, and this just blew me away. Wake Forest has given up 16 runs in the regionals and the super regionals this year, and they've hit 19 home runs.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
Wow, 19. Wow.
Yeah, 19 home runs, and they've given up 16 total runs. So that's a number you'll hear many times on our broadcast coming up during this next week.
And speaking of the home run, I don't recall the young man's name, but from TCU that really went off. I think maybe he had 2 grand slams in the same game in that game against Arkansas, where they put up 21 or 22 runs there at Baum-Walker Stadium in Fayetteville, which was really eye-opening.
You know, like we were just talking about, too, it depends on getting hot at the right time, because you look at that matchup and you know how good Arkansas is, and that also speaks to how difficult it is to get to Omaha, just to get here. And I think that's one of the things that, as we came out on the charter flight tonight and talking to some of the players, they're realizing the magnitude of what they have accomplished, but they're not blown away by it. They just said, we know we're good. We're not cocky. We're not overconfident. We know that we deserve to be here, and we're going to play as hard as we can, but also appreciate the moment. And that's where Tom Walter is a very humble guy. You know, the guy that gave his kidney to a player, and he's all about doing things the right way and handling yourself the right way, and his club reflects that too. So it's a good group to be around. They know how to, you know, Brock Wilkin won a game on Saturday in the Super Regionals because he popped up to second base and he ran hard, and the guy dropped it, and he was standing at second base, and ended up scoring the winning run because he ran out a pop-up to second. And this is a guy that just set the ACC all-time home run record.
Larry, we have a question from one of our loyal viewers and listeners, Shell Powell here in Charlotte. He says, can you ask Larry, due to the success this year, has the recruiting trail picked up even more for Wake Forest? Even like you said, the small school, the point that you were making when we first went on, but and then I wanted to follow that up with a question about the staff that Coach Walter has assembled there.
Sure. And Shell, that's a great question. And the truth of the matter is that pitching lab has made Wake Forest a really, really attractive place to go. And they're getting kids that top flight pitchers. You know, it's not the guy that was the number 2 or 3 guy in his high school team that said, oh, I can go and you'll make me a good pitcher. It's guys that were stars and are being recruited by the big teams that are, you know, approaching Wake Forest and saying, I think you guys can help me and I want to help you. And they're getting into different living rooms, no question about that. You know, 11.7 scholarships doesn't go very far in college baseball. And when you start divvying it up, you can't give it to everybody. And they're finding that, you know, sometimes kids are a little bit more willing to take less because of the development aspect that they have, very similar to the football program. I broadcast football as well. And the football team gets, you know, 3 stars and 2 stars instead of 4 stars and 5 stars. But they've been to 7 bowl games in a row because they develop talent. And the pitching lab has enabled them to do that. And they're absolutely are having more success on the recruiting trail. And also, it's a great school. You know, it's a 28th ranked school in the U.S. News and World Report. So it's a tremendous academic institution as well.
That was one of the things for me, Larry, was the fact that academically, it's not every kid can get in. And you always hear people make excuses, but you look at Vanderbilt, look at Stanford, you look at you guys. There's a lot of schools that are academic powerhouses, but also great in baseball as well.
And baseball especially, because you get a different kind of kid. And when you look at where the grad transfers are coming from, Wake Forest has a real strong program in a number of different areas with the grad transfers, and they've been helped significantly by being able to bring those kids in. But you're right, the guys that realize that there's going to be more to life probably than just baseball certainly know that they can get their education paid for and have a great college experience and enjoy all those good things. And so they sort out those kinds of schools. And you find that's part of the reason you have the high character, high quality type team that stays together the way that they have.
And that's something Trey Daly and I, the general manager with the Dirtbags, we were talking a little college baseball, recruiting yesterday. Good interview. If you haven't heard it, go back and check it out on our YouTube channel or pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. But Trey and I were discussing just the jump that this program's made, going from a good program that would, make the regionals every year or, every couple years and winning probably 35 games or so on average to doing what you're doing now. And he pointed to the pitching lab and then also pitching coach Corey Mascara, who had previously been at Maryland.
Yeah, no question. He's been a tremendous addition. He came in at just the right time as a combination of psychologist and pitching analyst. He really understands the nuances of how to use the information that you gain by the profiles of different pitches to get hitters out. They do a great job scouting. Bill Salento is the hitting coach and Corey Mascara, and they scout the hitters and the pitchers. And Matt Wessinger has been the first base coach, has come in and done a good job with the defensive side. And Will Craig, who was an All-American as a player, came back to get his degree so he could go into coaching. So he's got the pro aspect, and the kids really get a good feel for the entire package. Moose has done a great job getting his pitchers prepared. He does a tremendous job making trips to the mound and reading the attitude of his pitcher, knowing the pitcher's personality and knowing whether he needs a kick in the tail or whether he needs a pat on the back, which is huge when a coach comes out. And the other side of it is they're smart kids. And the school makes them that way. The last weekend of the season, Brock Wilken, All-American, home run records, couldn't make batting practice because he had a final he had to take on a Saturday. So about an hour and a half before the game, he came running out from his final, went down to the batting practice shack in center field and hit separately from the team because he'd missed BP. So ball games aren't enough reason to miss classes or tests around there. That's what they preach. And that's what they do. The other thing that really helped them and hurt them was COVID, quite honestly, because they got some players that didn't go in the draft in that 5-round draft, like Brock Wilken, came because he probably would have been a 7th or 8th round pick, but he didn't get drafted, so he ended up on campus. But they suffered for it because they had a junior class that expected to be going on to pro ball, and when they weren't, they started looking at how can I put up numbers for the scouts so I get drafted higher after my senior year. And they didn't perform as well 2 years ago on the field as they wanted to or expected to, bounce back last year and then put it all together this year.
Larry, really appreciate your time. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Larry, one of the things I love is I know being in Learfield, Kyle and I were talking about that over last weekend about the varsity app. So that's one of the ways we can listen to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just download the varsity app and hit Wake Forest as your favorite, and the game will be on there. GoDeeks.com. You can find the game broadcast on there. Stan Cotton and I have worked together for 9 years in baseball and 7 years in football, and we always joke that in football, Wake Forest plays one of the fastest offenses in the country, about 22 seconds between plays, and Stan takes 9 seconds to recap a play and about 8 seconds to set up the next one. So I basically have 5 seconds between football plays, which is enough to say, that's right, Stan, and that's about it. But then we get to baseball, and he said, low, ball one, Larry, and he just lets me go and talk. So we work it out, but that's how you can get it on the varsity app from Learfield or GoDeeks.com.
All right, Larry, thanks so much. Looking forward to, very excited for those of us that are college baseball fans. Our Pirates may be out, but we're looking forward. Good luck to the Demon Deacons. They've been the best team all year long, and we're looking forward to some great baseball this weekend.
it's going to be a wild and crazy, enjoyable week. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. Enjoy it. All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye. A very exciting time there with college baseball. And one of the things, obviously, we love to talk about is beyond baseball, or not beyond the field, would be obviously Bubba, that would be the umpires. And we've had some interesting things happen this past season for the Pirates. And I know a guy that knows a lot about college baseball and umpiring is joining us now, right?
Yeah, Dave. I think back over the last, I guess, 5+ years now that we've been doing the podcast. We've certainly had umpires on the show because we've had Wilson Rayner on multiple times, but not specifically to talk about umpiring, to talk Pirate football because of his ties there. So right now, very excited to welcome into the show first-time guest, veteran umpire who's now retired. He worked 3 College World Series, Scott Erby. Scott, we appreciate your time this evening.
Hey, guys. Good evening.
Great to have you on the show, and believe you're from right there in the Nashville, Tennessee area. But for our viewers and listeners, give them a little on your background and specifically as it pertains to umpiring.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to spend about 25 years in the Atlantic Coast Conference and the Southeastern Conference, and as you stated, worked 3 College World Series, worked 5 Junior College World Series, multiple regionals and super regionals, and actually prior to that, worked 5 Junior College World Series. And then when I retired in 2014, I became a part of the NCAA evaluation staff for a couple of years, evaluating umpires for postseason, flying around the country and looking, as part of the regional staff for the NCAA. And then just got to the point where I had young kids that were coming up playing sports, and it was time to focus on that. But I got out when the time was good, but been a lot of changes in the last, several years with replay and a lot of technology around umpiring.
Yeah, you mentioned the technology, the replay, a lot of different aspects of umpiring that we wanted to kind of pick your brain on and go into tonight, and just get your thoughts and maybe the thoughts
Sure.
of some of your peers. And we'll start off, since you mentioned replay. Replay is something that I think most coaches are definitely in favor of, and it's something that's evolved over the last several years, where some venues, some ballparks did not have that capability. Now it seems like most do, if not all. And just what are your thoughts overall? Because on the whole, I think it's a good thing, but at times it can certainly be frustrating when you have longer replays that delay the game.
Yeah, I tell everybody, a quick story. In 2014, we had Texas and Florida, and we missed a home run. We didn't have replay at that time, and we always say we were the crew that invented replay after the College World Series because they had it the next year. But it didn't affect the game, thank goodness. But I think, the one thing that people need to understand about replay, somebody still has to make a decision. Whether it's central replay or on the field, it's just another look at it. It's slower. It's multiple angles, but still someone has to make a decision to either overrule the call or uphold the call on the field. And I think, fans get frustrated a lot of times when there's not enough evidence to overturn something based on an angle or, and I think as, maybe during the week or on a weekend, you might only have 4 or 5 cameras, and now we're going in Omaha and they're going to have 14 to 15 angles or more.
Sorry about that, Scott. I got a phone call. But, yeah, no doubt as far as that aspect of the replay. And, one of the things, also a major point of emphasis this year has been the celebration rules, whether it's involving props or, staying in the dugout and so forth.
Yeah.
Here, East Carolina is our focus. Down in the AAC tournament, I'm sure you're probably aware of this situation. You had East Carolina led off the bottom of the first with a home run. There had been a party tray of subs in the dugout. One of the pitchers, who's probably not going to pitch that day, but was available if needed, had a sub that he was finishing up, and just so happened that Jacob Starling hit a home run. That player carries the sub out onto the warning track there behind the plate, and then gives that sub to the batter. And so and he gets ejected after the umpires came together. But then you have a situation like Oral Roberts, as I'm sure you're also aware of. Their guys are eating the gummy worms or whatnot when they get to first base.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people just we've had a bench jockeying rule for 20 years, from both sides to keep the peace. And so I think a lot of it, is that, baseball, especially in college baseball, is a very emotional game. And it's really trying to help calm those emotions versus shutting it down, because it can lead to different things. And, pitchers coming off with a third strike and looking in the dugout, that creates to possibly throwing at hitters and, a lot of different things that you want to try to avoid. And, 99% of umpires never want to have an ejection. That's the last thing they want, just because it requires a lot of paperwork and a lot of time on you to really justify what you did. Number one. Number two, people do come to the park to see players and not coaches and umpires. So, I think most of us realize that. Most good umpires do. And, and everything's situational, versus whether it's a sandwich or gummy. I mean, it's a rule. I mean, I was on the rules committee in 13 and 14 when we had the rule you couldn't come out of the dugout past the dirt for home runs, because we were having situations where players were at home plate and they were saying something to the opposing catcher. And then that just creates a lot of issues for fights or, possible tension in the game that you don't need.
Of the stuff that's happened recently, this is Kyle, by the way. There was the sandwich incident Bubba mentioned, with the East Carolina player, and then the gummy worms that seems to be a non-issue for the Oral Roberts players for whatever reason. I mentioned with our previous guest, I was watching the Tennessee Southern Miss Super Regional Finals, and Tennessee's pitcher Burns, who's got an unbelievable arm. Burns is an appropriate last name because he throws fire. But he had struck out back-to-back batters to end the inning and keep the momentum going for Tennessee and squash Southern Miss's rally. He did throat slash coming off the field, and I was kind of surprised he wasn't ejected. Was that just a situation probably where the umpires didn't see him do it and the camera caught it?
Yeah, I know I was watching the game as well. I know specifically what you're talking about. I think what's happened is that, they're going, we're starting to slowly, umpires today are accepting a little bit more of that. I mean, if he goes to the big leagues and tries some of that Xanax, that won't last long, just because you're showing up people, and I think we've slowly, the fans want, all the excitement and the pitchers coming off and slamming their glove when they strike someone out, or, the bat flips. I think, the new rule this year to get rid of that. So I think all the taunting, I mean, there's a taunting rule in football, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's where we're headed.
No, and I'm good. I'm good with celebrating. In fact,
Yeah.
I think they should let kids celebrate. I think when you get to the point where you're doing a throat slash, that's to me is insulting.
Yeah. I think probably wasn't seen. A lot of times if I'm a home plate umpire, in the inning you're getting baseballs or looking at something else, and then number two, a lot of guys that on the field are turning around and getting the clock going. So. But everything, like I say, everything is situational on those kind of things. I think you just cut it all out. If you want my opinion, I don't think it's going to happen. I think you got a generation of kids that, I remember, years ago, Clemson was real bad about the end of the third out. They would slam a baseball every time the catcher would on a strikeout. And we try to put a stop to that pretty quick.
Before the prop rule came, East Carolina, and to me this was harmless because it was fun. We would hit a home run. It was last year, guys, the year before, and wear an orange road cone on whoever hit the home run would wear an orange road cone on their head, and to me, that was harmless. Who is that taunting? That's just having fun.
Yeah.
Yet that's illegal now.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe if I'm the pitcher, it's not. I'll just rebuttal that a little bit, right? If I'm the opposing pitcher, it's like you're. What are my guys going to do if they hit a home run? So it's really just trying to, I think, slowly bring a little bit of, not the word class, but just a little bit more of respect of the game, in my opinion.
What about the fact? This is David, by the way. The fact that not only what the frustration that East Carolina fans have was that they said it was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which was wrong, and then the umpire got it wrong and said that our pitcher Gross actually put the sandwich, shoved it down Starling's throat in the report,
Yeah.
and that wasn't even that wasn't even right. I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
even close to being right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't, sorry, I didn't see specifically what happened on that situation. And I think that, that probably could be up for interpretation, I'm sure. But, I mean, it's, rule's a rule. And, I think what umpires are trying to do. And, the problem you have to understand is that umpires don't make the rules. It's coaches on the committee. I mean, I was on the committee, but I didn't have a vote. I mean, there's an umpire representative, but I don't have. I mean, it's coaches and administrators are the one that make the rules. So I mean, all we're doing is trying to enforce those rules, to the best you can. Whether it's the clock, whether it's a safety rule, whether it's a taunting rule, or it's a prop rule, whatever that is.
Scott, just a generalized question here, as you've you mentioned you umpired, for many many years. Of all the schools you've been to, of all the stadiums, who comes to mind as having the fans that were toughest on the umpires, and who has the fan base that was maybe the most consistently the most knowledgeable and fair?
I think the most knowledgeable and appreciated fans are LSU. I mean, they would always, if an opposing pitcher had a real good outing against them, would give him a standing ovation and respect that, from him as well. I mean, really, I did a regional years ago that East Carolina hosted in Henderson. I think that was the right place.
Kinston, probably.
Yeah, Kinston. Well, I was in an older ballpark, like in a neighborhood somewhere.
Yeah, Granger Stadium.
Yeah, and that was a great environment. And, I think there's, different fan bases have a lot of different, kind of passion to them. I mean, Clemson, the problem with Clemson, sometimes you had to walk through the fans to get to your locker room. So you heard a lot more. But I think, most umpires just, you hear noise, you don't hear anything specific. I think what you look at is how the administration treats you, when you get on campus to the time you leave, to the locker room, to the facilities, how the security is, and how professional they are, win, lose, or draw. I mean, everybody be nice to you when they're winning.
I guess it could also have been Wilson. Now I'm trying to figure out if he was.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to figure out.
Wilson.
Yeah, probably in 2001 when Keith LeClaire was still our head coach.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wilson for the regionals and then Kinston for the supers.
Because you had UMBC and then South Florida and Winthrop.
Yep.
But
that was a good regional. That's very, that's an electric environment for East Carolina.
Thankfully, we have a stadium now we can host in.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
They're two great ballparks with Fleming over the top.
We got a great coach and Coach Godwin. I knew him very well at Ole Miss. So, I think he's done a fabulous job there.
As far as baseball is concerned, we were talking obviously about the rules. Are there things that we can do? I know that I'm not a fan. I will just say I'm having to deal with it with the pitch clock, obviously the batter. I'm not really a fan of it. I feel like that, honestly, I think the people that love baseball are going to love baseball, and the people that don't like baseball, if you had it 30 minutes for a game length, they're still not going to like it. So are there things we can do to grow the game that you're seeing, that maybe rule changes or things that we can do for more fans?
Yeah, I think, if what's going on in the major leagues. I mean, there was a lot of ejections in the month of April over the clock, right? They've adjusted, I think, a lot to that. I've seen, just in my, purview, I've seen not as many ejections in the last, probably in May and June. I think, it's to speed up the game, try to get, I would tell you, the average game probably when I first came into college baseball 30 years ago was probably 2:10. Now it's over 3 hours. If you had a 2.5 hour game, that was a long game. And back then that was a lot of that early on was part of guerrilla ball. And I've always said the more offense, the quicker the game is. And I think now you have a power game. Of course, home runs and hitting's up. That's another debate, whether it's the baseball or the bat. But when I went out evaluating umpires in 17 and 18 and just watching the game, and you got draft picks on Friday night. Everybody's got a draft pick now.
Yeah.
On Friday. Everybody's got a top 3 round pick. And it's a 2-1 game. It's 3 hours. There's a lot of slowdown because college baseball game is a momentum. And I'll give one conference the kudos or the congratulations of slowing the game down. That's the Pac-12. You would go out in regionals and postseason, they'd throw to first base 4 or 5 times, and just they would slow the game down from a momentum. And a lot of coaches have come from the West, and they've taken up that model. So I think what everybody's trying to do is just speed up the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think there is something to be said for having a faster game. Dave was making the point of if you're trying to speed it up to get more people to watch baseball, that probably really ain't going to happen. You either like baseball or you don't. But from a TV standpoint, as college baseball continues to grow and there's more and more TV coverage, you want a more concise time for the games. And I'm with you over. You mentioned pickoffs to first base. I wish that was limited. I know it is now in Major League Baseball. That is a rule. I'd rather see that rule implemented at the college level than the pitch clock.
Yeah, I think I think what's going on in the major leagues. I think the robo ump's coming. That'll probably be in the major leagues in about 2 to 3 years for sure.
Oh
just
my God.
Because what they've done. It's in AAA right now, in certain parks.
Now, is that completely eliminating umpires with all robo umps, or is it robo umps and some real life umpires also?
Well, when we say that, basically it's a machine that's what it is. It's triggering down to say a beep to the umpire, that's a strike or a ball.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. And then they have, I think, I don't know specifically rules. I think they can overrule so many pitches an inning if they think, the machine got it wrong. So, but what they've done is they started, 4 or 5 years ago with it. They've educated a generation of, minor leaguers coming up with it, and they're used to it.
Now with the ever growing, AIs getting more and more advanced, is there any threat of the robo umps taking over the world?
I think there's still going to be certain things around. It's like tennis. Tennis has a lot of electronic kind of stuff. Soccer does as well. I think you're still going to have human, a lot of officials on the field for a lot of different things. I wrote an article for the NCAA in 2017 about technology because that's my background from an IT perspective. But, Google Glass is something that's still probably out there. You talk about AI where, someone could actually see a play at first base and they take an image of it and they rerun it, or they rerun the replay in Google Glass. That was something. TrackMan has hit the college game. As you've seen, strike zones gotten smaller because umpires are being graded on that. You're seeing overturns down a lot lower just because, in today's game, you have a lot of, like in the College World Series right now, 7 out of the 8 guys you'll see this weekend are all former AAA umpires. There's only one amateur umpire in the College World Series this year. So, we're seeing technology forcing a smaller strike zone in college baseball with TrackMan. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's in Major League Baseball as well. So that's where we're at from changing the game in my perspective.
Yeah, Scott, you talk about TrackMan. During the 2022 season, I was at a college game watching with another college coach, and he was just the umpire behind the plate. He was catching a lot of flack, but at the same time, like the college coach that I was watching the game with, he said he may not be having as good of a night tonight as he did in this game when he umpired our game, but when he umpired our game, he was the best guy we had all season and got like 98% of the pitches correct. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys in college baseball right now throwing up a lot of major league numbers like that. From that side of it, and I do think one thing that they're poorly calling, and I've said this for the last 2 or 3 years, we do a poor job of calling in college baseball mostly of the high curveball. I know coaches don't want you calling that, but I know pitching coaches do, but hitting coaches don't. But that is a strike a lot of the time. It can be in the buffer zone for them. So from a grading side of it, they may not get pinged on it. But I think that's a pitch there. I'd like to see us take the TrackMan zone and expand it a little bit for college baseball. Because I've always, the plate 17 inches, the baseball's 3.25 in diameter or whatever. So that gives you, roughly 23 inches of plate, and we're down to 17. And I think, you saw in the regionals and super regionals, when you get into the third level pitching is where you see the big difference.
Scott, Bubba mentioned earlier you had called 3 College World Series. Talk about your experiences in Omaha. What was it like? Yeah. Maybe some of the most exciting moments you witnessed, as an umpire in Omaha, and what it meant to be able to call 3 College World Series.
Yeah, I mean, there's only roughly about over 200 umpires that's ever called the World Series. You're in a unique group, an elite group of guys. Number one. Number two, I was very fortunate and very blessed to have a lot of mentors that helped me get there. I umpired my first one was 2007 in Rosenblatt, and then was part of the crew that in 2011 opened up Ameritrade. So got to see that transition from Rosenblatt to Ameritrade, which is now, I guess, Charles Schwab. And, I saw the difference just as that. I mean, Rosenblatt had a great history to it and a great character, but, the modern stadium just made a whole lot of sense for that. So, but, there's, roughly 3,000 NCAA umpires, in the system. There's 96 that get chosen for the first round, 32 for the super regionals, and 8 for the College World Series every year. So, I was very fortunate to umpire at a high level at the end of my career, and I was smart enough to get out before I was too bad or too fat.
That's what Scott have a couple questions here on Facebook Live. Justin Butts, who is an umpire, does high school, maybe also some American Legion, maybe some junior college. But Justin says the way I see it is an umpire, the less I'm noticed, the better. He said talk about the shortage of umpires in today's game.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of that. I'll take the opposite approach. I think our local associations, our high school associations, have done a poor job of recruiting, and also not allowing young umpires a chance. I mean, I was very fortunate. Got out of college, worked 1 year of high school and college, and then got thrown into the college game. I've got a 20-year-old son. He's in the middle right now of umpiring a lot. He's a college football player at a D3 school, but he's umpiring. He realized he can make some good summer money doing that, but he's taking a passion for it. I think we got to recruit, young players, young athletes. The problem, now is from the baseball side of it, the kids are in high school playing. They play all summer, so you got to go out and recruit, football players. You guys still there?
We are.
Yeah. So you got to go out and, recruit, different kids from different sports, football players, basketball players, and teach them the game from an umpiring perspective. And I think, as a young umpire, you learn everything, at that 12-year-old level, you're going to have obstruction interference. You're going to have 2 runners standing on the base together. You're going to have 2 guys colliding. I mean, you're going to have a lot of that kind of stuff happening. You really learn how to umpire at that level, as a young umpire. So.
Justin also says, as a JUCO umpire, he says, I love the 21-20 rule.
I'm not sure what that is, but I did 5 junior college World Series. I did a lot of junior college baseball early in my career. And I tell young umpires, I've done a lot of camps around the country, build your resume. whatever that is. Go, fight hard to umpire, to do the state tournament, fight hard to do the JUCO regional, to do the NEI regional, to do the NEI World Series. Build a resume, and because as you want to go up the ladder in college baseball, that gives you those accolades to do that.
Sorry, Justin says 20-second pitch clock is what he was referencing.
Yeah.
One,
I think
it's the 120 between innings.
Yeah. So I every league has their own parameters around that. I think the SEC was like 17 or something this year. So I think that testing the difference of that and what it is. I mean, people don't understand that the 20-second rule has been in the rule book since the start of time. We're just now enforcing it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's something I think most people would not certainly be aware of. And Cliff Godwin down at the American Athletic Conference tournament, he said that was the real problem that he had, just because just the inconsistency in the way which it was enforced. Because he said there was one guy that there was no doubt that he could see it being legit, but then there was one who is a very quick worker, where the way in which the clock was being reset, he said it could not have been right.
Yeah, I think I think that's one fallacy as an umpire, and the NCAA tries to do that consistently, and the National Federation is having a rule that's consistent no matter where you go. So in North Carolina it may be called one way, you come to Tennessee it's called another, and coaches don't like that.
And he said moving into the 2024 season, he said it's going to be very interesting to see how it's implemented at ballparks. And you're going to have a pitch clock visible somewhere, whether or multiple places, preferably. And then who you have in the press box or wherever, as far as resetting that clock and making sure it's done consistently. He said because that's not a job that you can have some novice doing. He said otherwise it's going to be a crap show.
Yeah, I think when the NCAA, when they write the rule book, they have to take into consideration the resources at a D3 school versus a D1, right? And I think in my opinion, you're trying to do that stuff at the junior college level, the D3 levels. They're not going to have the resources. They're not going to have someone work a clock. I mean, they're fighting just to have someone work the scoreboard, for their game. So I think some adjustments are going to have to be done there. And, of course, then you want to put it on the umpire and have him have a stopwatch and a two-man crew at a junior college level. And it's not fair to the young umpires coming up, or any umpire that's got to enforce that kind of stuff without the right technology. So I'm not a fan of having all the time. We were the only sport without a clock, if you look at it, and now we have it. But I'm not saying it needs to be at every level.
No, Scott, you referenced LSU's fan base. I know when I set the interview up, I told you we'd ask you for a few stories. One that you can perhaps share a name with, and then some that maybe you can't. But having, I'm sure, been around the likes of maybe a Ron Polk at Mississippi State back in the day, or maybe even I'm not sure if you ever crossed paths with Skip Bertman, or if that was after he had moved into his administrative role. But some of those more recognizable names, a Jack Leggett in the ACC, guys like that.
Yeah, Skip was always good about, because when we first started umpiring, I mean, if you go back when the conferences started in the SEC conferences, most prior to 1990, all the games were umpired by local high school groups. I mean, if you went to Texas or Florida State, I mean, they had the same 4 umpires every game. And at Alabama, there was only one guy that worked the plate. So then when they went to neutral umpires, where, guys from Nashville was going to travel to LSU or Mississippi State or whatever, I mean, we weren't making any money. We were making, I think $300 for 3 games, and then we had to take our hotel and travel out of that. So they would feed you and stuff. So Skip was real good about coming out, at a play at first and act like he was talking about the play. I mean, he wanted to know, okay, you guys got your dinner coupons and where you headed tonight, and he'd bob his head and he'd get the crowd all going. So he played up to that kind of stuff. So, but see, the thing about Skip Bertman was he was a pitching coach. So he never wanted to get ran. He always had people on the bench to get ejected. He had plenty of those guys. So, I mean, I was very fortunate. You always have those guys that come through that who are different. Whether Mark Teixeira at Georgia Tech comes to mind, where he walks up the first time at the plate, or a Buster Posey, or those kind of guys. You just see those guys come through, or Todd Helton, or I can name 100 of them. You just know they're different. I mean, back then there wasn't like there is now, 5 draft picks on a college team.
And you mentioned Buster Posey. Obviously, and that was a legend that I did not name, Mike Martin at Florida State. And then also the great Augie Garrido between his time at Fullerton and the University of Texas. Any stories or so forth involving either of them, or maybe some that I've left out?
Yeah, Mike Martin was always like a grandfather. If he came out on you, you knew you probably missed it. And but he was a car salesman too. He always wanted to give him a little bit of advantage and those kind of things. But was a great ambassador to the game. And Augie Garrido, I had him when he was at Texas, and didn't have him as at Cal State Fullerton. But a lot of good coaches in the Atlantic Coast Conference as well. I think Brian O'Connor is one of the classiest guys that's out there. He's like, people don't understand. There's when you get the umpiring at a certain level, there's a lot of respect between coaches and umpires, because they realize their job depends on it, and they want good, fair umpiring. Because when East Carolina travels to LSU, they want to know that 3-2 pitch when the base is loaded in the 7th inning, that's down the middle, that you're going to strike the kid out from LSU, you're going to get a fair shake. And I think that's what's changed in college baseball. All the local stuff's gone anymore, no homers and stuff like that. But it's been an evolution. I mean, I was fortunate to have Ron Polk his last game, regular season game at Auburn. We had a good conversation around that. Just because he did a lot. I mean, while I was a player at Austin Peay, and we played against them and in the '80s, and he revolutionized college baseball. He was the first ambassador, in my opinion.
No doubt, and certainly, without using any names, perhaps a bizarre call or two that you recall or were a part of down through the years. Because I know last year in East Carolina's season opening series against Bryant, East Carolina hit what appeared to be a walk-off home run, catcher Justin Wilcoxon, but you see the Bryant first baseman pointing toward the umpire, and he had called time. And when they were getting to the bottom of what took place, he said that he called time because he couldn't see. And Cliff said, "Well, did you think the sun was going to move in 5 or 10 seconds?"
Yeah.
That was tough.
Well, we had a play in a super regional with Wichita State and UC Irvine. At Wichita State, they were the top 4 team in the country. I think this is 2007. And Dave Serrano was the coach at Irvine, and then I think the coach at Wichita State was there forever.
Gene Stevenson,
yeah. So Irvine comes in and beats them first game, and we got a 3-2 game, and we got to play at first base. I'm at home. Another umpire is at first, and bases loaded to end the inning, and the umpire called him out, and we got together and thought he pulled his foot. So overturned the call, run scored, and tied up the game. And we all could have sworn he was off the bag, and that was before replay. And then I get in the locker room, my phone's blowing up, and there's some major league umpires that I know. They were like, the guy always stays on the bag. Don't ever overturn that call anymore. So if you look at most of the calls today, on the pulled foot, I mean, that was one you really learn. And I used to share that play a lot with a lot of umpires at clinics, and just say they really hold the bag more than you think.
Have another comment from Justin Butts. He says, I can tell you my local group here in North Carolina, we used to book the East Carolina games back in the 90s. Who were some of the umpires that you've umpired with in this area when working ACC games and so forth?
Golly, of course, Ron Sebastian, he's probably a legend in that area. I know he, Bryant Woodall, Greg Street, just a lot of great umpires coming out of North Carolina. Barry Chambers, he was that area for a while. He lives in South Carolina now. College World Series umpire. A lot of guys from that whole Carolina area, because the ACC started conference umpires in like 92, and the SEC started in like 90. A lot of great umpires in that area. A lot of great baseball.
No doubt, Scott. We appreciate you so much. Certainly,
Yeah.
You guys have a tough job, and hopefully more guys will get in and ladies will get in the business, as they say, and with the umpire shortage. And do you have anything before we let you go?
No, I just think I think it should be a prerequisite for every travel baseball coach that have to umpire at least once a year.
Spoken like a true umpire, no doubt about it.
Hey guys, you so thanks much for your time.
Appreciate you so much. It was a lot of fun.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Appreciate Scott so much. And guys, definitely a lot of fun. We're looking college baseball. Obviously, we want the Pirates to be there in Omaha. They will knock down that door very soon. But it's going to be a lot of fun if you're a college baseball fan. And I had a friend of mine today ask me about, do you save up your money? Do you have enough money if you could go to Omaha? I said, look, we'll find a way. Absolutely. And I think it'll hit us when we least expect it, like life. Right, guys?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Who knows? I just want to go. I don't give a damn if we have a season like Wake Forest or have or we're in Oral Roberts. If we go, if we make it Omaha from a 1 seed or make it Omaha from a 4 seed, I just want to go. I'm sick of not going. I'm sick of everybody else going, and I think we can all say that. And
yep,
you get to this time of year, and there's I remember watching Southern Miss Tennessee the other night, and part of me wanted to pull for the Golden Eagles because they're my second favorite team, and the other part of me was jealous and said, God almighty, Southern Miss going to go to Omaha twice before we even go once. So it's fun to watch the College World Series, fun to keep up with all this, but at the same time, there's a lot of jealousy on my part. I look at Wake Forest and I'm jealous. I look at Oral Roberts and I'm jealous. I mean, it gets to be to the point where it becomes almost unenjoyable after the Pirates get eliminated, where I don't want to even watch it. I'm sure I'll watch some of it, but we're going to make it one day for sure, but we already should have. It's just amazing. We never can seem to catch a break.
Well, we will. And I agree with you 1000%, Kyle. It's when you say also, I agree with you when it's really tough when after you lose in a regional, then we had to stomach the super regionals this year and then College World Series. I do watch it, but like you said, it's not the same passion. Everybody can say, you have a passion as a fan of baseball in this particular case with college baseball. But when it comes to your team, your alma mater, like my case, and you guys, we've been pulling for East Carolina for so long. And you think about all the great coaches, you think about all the great players, all the great people that are behind the scenes that are part of the program that are awesome. It's going to happen. And Kyle, I think once that door's down, we're going to go there multiple times, and it'll be great when we don't have to talk about it anymore, for sure.
Kind of shifting gears, but still talking baseball. Over these last few days, some Pirates already doing very well in their respective summer collegiate leagues. You have Dixon Williams playing for the Bethesda Big Train.
Jesus Christ.
He went 3 for 7.
26-0.
Oh yes, yeah. I'd forgotten the score of the game, but yes, in that 26-0 win for the Big Train, 3 for 7 with like 5 or 6 runs batted in, I believe. So great for Dixon. Definitely would not be surprised to see him take on a big role in 2024. And then
Were they playing a T-ball team?
No, church league, Kyle,
Okay.
church league.
Okay.
and then Ryan McChrystal. Ryan McChrystal is doing very well once again for the Burlington Sock Puppets in the Appalachian League. And you're going to have here shortly, I know today he was on Pirate Radio, but JJC, Jacob Jenkins Cowards, heading to the Cape. I'll have to look up. I don't recall which team he's going to be
The
with
Red
in the Cape.
Sox.
Okay, but that's
I'll know
great.
that.
That's great that JJC is going to be in the Cape. You have Josh Moylan, who's probably going to have a workout with the Philadelphia Phillies here soon. So really keep an eye on him, Josh Gross, and where they go in the draft as to whether they will return or not in 2024. Justin Wilcoxon, probably to a little bit lesser degrees, another one to keep an eye on in that same light as far as the draft.
Bubba, with the Appalachian League changing from a professional, it was a rookie league for Major League Baseball. It's a minor league. It was the lowest level of minor baseball, rookie league, and now I believe Major League Baseball actually owns it still, even though
Correct.
it's a collegiate league.
Yep.
Is that now the number 2 collegiate league behind the Cape?
No, CPL.
You think
Yeah,
Coastal Plain is still above it, even though Major League Baseball owns the Appalachian League?
yeah,
Yeah.
the Cape Cod is certainly the cream of the crop, and then after that, I know CPL and the Coastal Plain League is pretty high ranking, but there's certainly a lot of other good summer leagues around the country. I know the Northwoods League in the Midwest is one I think is pretty reputable, and I'm not sure which one would be considered number 2.
Okay.
Hey guys, did you hear about Morehead City? They were the Marlins, but did you hear the new name for their team? I'm not making this up.
Is it the Morehead City Morehead?
No, the Morehead City Motor Boaters.
Yes,
Oh my goodness!
I saw that, and I
I thought about Kyle.
thought of Vince Vaughn.
I thought about Kyle.
Motorboating's fun. I think of the song by Little Big Town.
Exactly, motor boating. Yeah,
Yeah, the Valley League, the Shenandoah Valley League, and we've certainly had some Pirates in that. I remember when Davis, Kirkpatrick, as well as some others, pitched for the team there in the Shenandoah.
What about Thomas Francisco? Didn't he play in that league, or am I making that up?
And we also have some in the. It's I believe you're correct on that. It's trying to remember if he played for Charlottesville. We had.
I think it was, that sounds Charlottesville, but I'm not sure. 100%.
I know last year Carter Cunningham played for the Charlottesville Tom Sox, and this year we have Zach Root and one other Pirate I'm trying to remember. But we have at least 2
what
Pirates
the hell
with
is
the
a Tom Sock?
You don't know what a Tom Sock is? No, I don't know. I'd have to Google it. Craig says you can't beat Banana Ball. Obviously, talking about the Savannah Bananas.
Bananas. Yeah. Well, you take that banana ball and you combine it with motorboating, and you got something.
And Justin said his brother Brett, former pitcher for the Pirates, played for the Harrisonburg Turks in the Valley League.
Harrisonburg Turds?
Turks.
Oh, Turks. Okay, all right.
I knew you were going to say that. God.
Yeah. And then Johnny Robertson. I appreciate JR chiming in. Maybe he just tuned in. If not, surprised he hasn't chimed in before now. But he said the last 4 Valley League champions have all had at least one Pirate on the roster.
Well, gag me with a spoon.
Man, I'm so excited that Greenville's
you get the Valley reference there. That was pretty good.
Yes, I did. Yeah, the Valley Girl. Yeah. I sure did. Yeah, I tell you what, the Greenville team is going to be a lot of fun. We were talking about that today at work. After work, we can go to a lot of the games that are going to be in the CPL. So hopefully I hope they keep the name the Greenville Greenies. I think that was the minor league team's name, and so that will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they asked. I saw somewhere asking for suggestions. I know a lot of people say the Greenies. I thought the 23 would be pretty cool. You could, then immediately get East Carolina fans on board if they called them the Greenville 23. That'd be pretty neat.
Guys, kind of shifting gears a little bit. Something obviously we had John Gilbert on yesterday. Excellent, 25-minute conversation with him. But a mind-boggling,
Very concerned, Bubba.
A mind-boggling number is you have approximately 6,000 Pirate Club members. Only 6% of those, so roughly 360 people, or thereabouts, have made contributions to Pirates Unite. So that has to change. Far too few people doing too much.
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't given the Pirates Unite yet, and I will soon enough. But we need to. I ain't got a phone call either. I got call my phone. Hey, won't you give me a ring? Hey, Kyle, can you spare a little change for Pirates Unite? I mean, I don't know what we're doing reaching out to people individually. I mean, call me. Call other people, not just me. I mean, if you want people to give to Pirates Unite, you might start beating on doors. Sometimes it's hard to say no when you got somebody on the phone, and that'd be my advice. Bubba, have you got a phone call?
No, I have not gotten a phone call. Just electronic communication via email and so forth. But yes, I do think that's from the outside looking in, that's underutilized, and the phone call and like you're saying, kind of the personal nature of that. Not just a automated call, but making as many of those personal phone calls as you can, because that really lets your donors realize that you appreciate them and their importance to what you're doing. And so whether it's one thing to
get them on the phone and just flat out, hey, can we go ahead and get your donation now? How much can you give now? Can you give more later? Be a damn used car salesman. Get people on the phone. I mean, it's the electronic communication. Yes, I know it's 2023, but we all know a lot of the Pirate Club members. We may be the younger side of a lot of the Pirate Club, unfortunately. So I would recommend utilizing some phone calls, and I'm also, a bit concerned. Well, you continue on that, Bubba. Then I'll get on what I was going to say.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Were you going down the path as far as the age of the Pirate Club members?
No, I was actually going to get off of that.
Okay.
But that is a point again. To phone calls versus electronic communication is, like I say, we're on the younger side of the Pirate Club. I would venture to say, and we're all in our 40s. So people older than us, they may not check. They might not check their email very often.
I like your math. I'm still in the 40s. That's good, Cole.
Are you in your 50s now, Dave?
50, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that's right. You just recently had a birthday.
Yeah, but you were right up until April 14th.
But anyway, what I was going to say is Gilbert on our interview yesterday, then again on his interview with Igo, he talked about basically NC State and UNC wouldn't play us anymore without getting legislation involved, which is the first time I've heard him really mention legislation. So it'd be interesting to see if we take that route. He also said he doesn't know if any Power 5 teams are going to be willing to come to Greenville. So, I don't know what we do about that. I can tell you this much, and this ain't even up for debate, in my opinion. If we don't get Power 5 teams coming to Greenville after what's on the schedule in 28, if that doesn't happen, we're going to have to do something about a different conference. We cannot sell season tickets on a regular basis in this goofy conference with some of the teams we have. if you can't get Power 5 schools in here, you need to have an appealing regional schedule. And UTSA, SMU, as good as they are, ain't regional. And, Gilbert talked about asking student athletes who our rivals were, and they say UNC and NC State. And he asked them, well, what about in conference? And they don't have an answer. And he talked about creating a rivalry with Charlotte. And I think that's fine and dandy for for basketball and baseball. But East Carolina and Charlotte in football, fans don't want that to be a rivalry.
I think our rivalry is more, even though not in, they should have been picked, but it's a whole nother ball game. But App State and East Carolina are more of a rival.
Well, that's why I go back to the Sun Belt. I think it's an inevitable. I think it's an inevitability. It's only a matter of time that's going to happen, unless we go on a tear, and with the new playoff format, go to the playoffs every year, and you say, hey, why change what's working, or that gets us elevated to a Power 5 conference. I think it's an inevitability we're going to be in the Sun Belt, and I'm okay with that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But this new league in football, it just ain't gonna. It just ain't gonna. It just ain't gonna do it. It's not going to create excitement with the fan base.
What if we win championship?
Oh, sure, winning cures all. That's what I just said,
Yeah.
Dave. I said if we're winning championships on a regular basis, then you may say, why change what's working? But I have some concerns with the scheduling talk. We missed an opportunity for a follow-up question there with the inability to schedule NC State and UNC. You mentioned at App State, unless we are planning on joining the league with them. And maybe Gilbert is doing this. We didn't ask him, but we need to get a long. We have a series with App State, but we need to get a long-term deal signed with App. And I know App would want to do it just as much as us. You just don't want them to get filled up before it's done.
Give credit to Stephen Igo and Hoist the Colors today. He did actually. I think John Gilbert brought it up before Stephen had a chance to ask, and that was that he and Doug Gillen, AD at App State, were definitely on the same page there, and that that's a series that don't be surprised in the not too distant future, perhaps that it will be extended, and
Well, he could have
definitely
shared that with us yesterday on our show.
No games in Charlotte if he has, he doesn't see himself agreeing to that, but just in Greenville and Boone.
No, there's no need to do the Charlotte thing now. App State's proven themselves. Home and home between Greenville and Boone is perfectly fine.
But he said, he is open to playing a neutral site game at Bank of America Stadium if it's the right opponent.
Yeah, no doubt. And one thing I had mentioned, just throwing it out there because we talked about being at UVA in Charlottesville last weekend or weekend before last. With their conversations between Gilbert and their AD, and I mentioned maybe playing UVA up at the Redskins Stadium. That would be a good opportunity for a neutral site game, something like that. That's just something I'm throwing out there. That's not been talked about at all, but just an idea I had.
No, you're right. You're right about that. That's a game that I think it's a quick drive for both fan bases, and that's the kind of excitement that you were talking about with season tickets. But that's the kind of excitement of games that people do want. It's a ACC school, and it's kind of funny. The Pirate fans hate ACC schools, but yet that's the only way you can get them to a stadium. So that would be a great.
Well, you hate them, you love to beat them. And I don't think it's just ACC schools. I think the App State series is a series that will draw a lot of fans. I think fans will come out for Marshall. I think fans would come out for Coastal. I think fans would come out for JMU. They would bring fans.
What about Liberty?
Yeah, Liberty also. Sure, absolutely. Liberty's got a great
Old Dominions. Some of our fan base doesn't like. I actually like the ODU series.
I like the ODU series. What I didn't like was the amount of games signed, but I like playing Old Dominion. And again, at this point, if the money was the same, I would definitely choose the Sun Belt over the American if all things were
But
equal.
but like I was telling you guys, let's take the money and still schedule those opponents in the non-conference as much as we can,
Yeah,
and
but
then
you
we get
need
the
to
best of
build.
both worlds.
But in the best case scenario, you build conference rivals that you're going to play every year in all sports. Yeah, you schedule them in football, but now you're talking. You'd be playing the schools in baseball. I mean, what a great fit we would be in that baseball league. I mean, that baseball league is a beast. You put us into it, it becomes an even bigger beast. Could you imagine the Sun Belt baseball tournament being held in Myrtle Beach at the Pelicans ballpark with East Carolina and Coastal Carolina fans there? I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's so many things that are appealing to me about that. If all things were equal financially, and I do think, fortunately or unfortunately, it's going to end up that way. But for the
Well,
time being,
let me ask you a question.
sure.
So, since ESPN that we all love and hate, they still are the ones that dictating this. Don't you think that they told Oresco to pick those teams to keep the kind of money, or if
No,
not, he's not
no,
doing his job?
no. They told Oresco not to take teams from the Sun Belt because they had a contract with the Sun Belt, so they asked him to, and he did what they said, and he chose media markets. Now, those media markets didn't equate to Conference USA getting a good deal. So why are they going to equate to the American keeping a good deal? And no, I don't think ESPN told Oresco to take those teams so they could keep the same amount of money. If I'm running a business, I want to pay you the least I can. I want to devalue your product on your end while it's still bringing advertisement dollars into me. The reason Oresco took those teams is because the potential the ESPN may see for advertising dollars in the city of Birmingham, the city of Charlotte, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In
San Antonio.
San Antonio, sure. Well, San Antonio that is the one I would have taken,
Yeah.
because I do think that media market has embraced UTSA. UTSA has good football, and there's only one pro sports team in that city. But our contract is up, I believe, in 27 or 28. I need to look and see. It could be 20. It could be 25. I'm pretty sure it's 27 or 28. Unless there is some major strides made between now and then, there's no way we're going to get 7 or 8 million again. And if we do, 7 or 8 million to 28 ain't going to mean what 7 or 8 million means now with inflation like it is.
What about if there's supposed to be stuff coming down next month as far as the Big 12 Pac-12 losing teams, adding teams? What about the and Big 10 as well? What about a merger maybe with Mountain West? Would you think that gives us more money?
Let's play the scenario out. If the Big Ten adds Oregon and Washington, and then the Pac-12 is in disarray at that point, the 4 corner schools, Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, bolt to the Big 12. That will leave the Pac-12 with 4 schools. If they don't vote to dissolve the league, the Pac-12 will probably hang on, add a handful of schools from the Mountain West, add a handful of schools from the American, and then where does that leave us? Who knows? It's all going to play out like it is, but I don't see us. I'll say this: I wanted to hear Dave, and I personally, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see us staying in the current American the way it is now, no more than 5 years. We'll see if I'm right.
Sorry, I had a phone call coming in. Say that again, Kyle.
I was just saying, as we wrap it up, I'll end it with that discussion. I don't see us staying in the current American the way it is now, no more than 5 years. We'll see if I'm right.
Okay. No doubt about it. I definitely like, as you know, you and I definitely agree that a lot of appealing teams that are in the Sun Belt. There's no question about that. And maybe the Sun Belt. Hey, maybe the Sun Belt gets more money next time around, and then it would be the right move. But until they get more money, It's a step down at the current time, and I don't mean that in disrespect. I'm just talking
No, it's
about.
not a step down in terms of competition, just financially.
No,
It's a
I'm talking
better,
about financially.
it's a better baseball league. It's
Right,
equal
I'm talking about
football. It's
financial.
an equal football league. Yeah, financially it is. Yes.
That's my concern, and we'll see if it all. Who knows what's going to happen? We don't even know
But
what's going to happen.
not as big as it sounds like, because we would make up a lot of money with travel costs.
I don't know. That's what I'd love to know is how much is it costing us. I think maybe Bubba's had it, but I think it's coming out that we are in the clear about, was it $2 million difference? But still, $2 million is $2 million. But anyway, we'll see how that plays up. I don't know what happened to Bubba, but
Let's wrap it up, Dave.
I know that's what I'm trying to tell you. I can't wrap it up right this second, so let me see what I can keep talking. I'm on my phone tonight, so I'm not on the usual. There he is.
Bubba's back.
Okay. All right. But anyway, want to remind everybody that we have great programming like John Gilbert, as he talked about. We have, Trey Daly from the Dirtbags. Bubba, you did a great job. I listened to that. Great job with him. We also have Coach Kim McNeil. She was on recently. Shane Winkler has been on there with Bubba. We've got great interviews coming up next week, too, guys. So a lot of football interviews. Looking forward to that. Plus, tomorrow night, Bubba, as we do our opponent preview, we got that coming up, too.
Yeah, Steve Cotton, play-by-play voice, a longtime play-by-play voice of the Marshall Thunder and Herd, and then Adam Witten, play-by-play voice of App State. So we'll preview games 2 and 3, and then we'll probably go ahead. We may put this out tonight, either tonight or tomorrow around lunchtime. Today I had the opportunity to catch up with first-year Navy head coach Brian Newberry, and discussed his team as well as a couple other topics, and we'll get that firsthand look at the Navy midshipmen from their first year head coach. Seems weird talking about Navy and not saying Coach Kenny Matololo, but athletic director Gladchuck there in Annapolis decided to part ways, and today, when I was talking to Coach Newberry, I was talking about the transition, and he said, yeah, that first month or month and a half, it was really drinking out of a fire hose. He said, because it was, he said it was great to be a head coach, but it was unexpected.
Well, yeah, we'll see how that's one of the things the New American has. It's going to be interesting to see how many new coaches we have in the New American and how they fare. Will they do great? The Tom Hermans of the world at FAU, and you have all kinds of coaches. One of, I think it's 6 new coaches, right, Bubba, with Newberry there at Navy.
Yeah, you got Newberry, Trent Dilford. As you mentioned, Herman. You got homeboy at Charlotte.
Biff Poche.
Yeah. It's a lot of new coaches. So it'll be an interesting football season for sure. You got former Indiana head coach. I can't think.
Kevin Wilson at Tulsa.
Kevin Wilson at Tulsa.
That's right, Tulsa. That's the one I couldn't remember. Thank you, Bubba. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it plays out. Guys, I don't know about you, but certainly ready for college football. And the coaches will say that they're definitely not ready, but when it gets to be this time of year, it's hard to believe. But it's only, about 80 days before the first game?
Yep, and next Tuesday, and we'll be catching up with East Carolina offensive coordinator Donnie Kirkpatrick. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and that you ring that notification bell so you're alerted on your device, when we upload new content like that conversation with Donnie K.
No doubt. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you, our great guests as well. And viewers and listeners, or if you're listening or viewing live or certainly on the archives, we appreciate you so much. We never take you for granted. Until next time, you've been watching and listening to The Sports Objective. Good night, everybody. And as always,